At exactly 3:16 a.m., the town of San Isidro in the Philippines always seemed to fall into an unnatural silence. Not the peaceful kind, not the kind that helps you sleep. This silence felt forced, as if something unseen pressed its fingers against the entire town and whispered, "Be quiet." Even the crickets stopped, even the wind refused to move. And then, at exactly 3:17 a.m., the screaming would begin. It came from a house at the edge of town, a house everyone avoided, a house no one dared to speak about after sunset. The locals called it Bahay ng Sigaw, the House of Screams. Every night, without fail, at exactly 3:17 a.m., a horrifying chorus erupted from within its walls. Not one voice, not two, but dozens, crying, begging, screaming in pain. Some spoke in Tagalog, some in whispers that sounded too old to belong to any living language. And sometimes, if you listened closely enough, you could hear your own name. That was the part that unsettled people the most. Miguel Reyes didn't believe any of it. Miguel had just moved to San Isidro from Quezon City, hoping to escape the chaos of the city and start fresh as a freelance videographer. He had heard rumors about the house, of course. Everyone had. But to him, it was just another local myth. Every place has one, he told his cousin Liza, who had lived in the town her whole life. A haunted house, strange noises. People exaggerate things they don't understand. Liza didn't smile. "This one is different," she said quietly. Miguel chuckled. "Sound is tricky at night. Could be animals, wind pressure, echo. It called my name once." What if everything you thought you knew about the Aztecs was only half the story? Not the brutal empire of sacrifice you've heard about. Not the endless wars, not the fear, but something far more unsettling. Something advanced. Because buried beneath centuries of dust, conquest, and distortion lies a truth that historians are still trying to fully piece together. A civilization so sophisticated, so ahead of its time, that its echoes are still shaping your life today, whether you realize it or not. Let's go back. Long before modern cities, before steel skyscrapers and digital maps, there was a place that shouldn't have existed, a city rising from water, a city that seemed to defy nature itself. Its name was Tenochtitlan. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast lake under the blazing sun of central Mexico. The air is alive, canoes glide silently across shimmering waters, traders shout across floating markets, and in the distance, towering temples pierce the sky. Bridges stretch like veins across the water, connecting districts of life and activity. Everything is ordered. Everything has purpose. This was no primitive settlement. This was precision. The Aztecs didn't just build a city. They engineered an ecosystem. Tenochtitlan was constructed on an island in Lake Texcoco, a place most would consider uninhabitable. But where others saw limitation, the Aztecs saw possibility. They drove wooden stakes into the lake bed, layered mud and vegetation, and created stable ground where there was none. Over time, they expanded outward, crafting a city that would rival the greatest capitals of the world. Some accounts suggest it was larger and cleaner than many European cities at the time. Let that sink in. While parts of Europe struggled with sanitation and overcrowding, the Aztecs had systems in place to manage waste, control flooding, and supply fresh water across their city. Aqueducts carried clean water from distant springs. Causeways connected the island to the mainland, and canals turned the city into a living network of transport. This wasn't just survival, this was mastery over environment. But the real secret of their success wasn't the city itself. It was what surrounded it, floating gardens. Known as chinampas, these artificial islands were one of the most efficient agricultural systems ever created. Picture rows of crops, lush, green, thriving, seemingly floating on water. Corn, beans, squash, chilies, all grown in a carefully balanced system that recycled nutrients naturally. The Aztecs layered mud from the lake with decaying plant matter, creating fertile soil that could produce multiple harvests each year. This wasn't basic farming. This was sustainable agriculture, centuries before the concept even had a name. And it worked. So well, in fact, that it fed a population of hundreds of thousands, turning Tenochtitlan into one of the most powerful urban centers of its time. But the Aztecs weren't just builders or farmers. They were thinkers, observers of the sky, keepers of time. Look up. The night sky to the Aztecs wasn't just decoration. It was a map, a guide, a living system filled with meaning. They tracked the movement of the sun, the moon, and the stars with astonishing precision. Their calendar systems, complex and deeply symbolic, guided everything from agriculture to religious ceremonies. One of these calendars, often referred to as the sunstone, is still studied today. It's more than a tool, it's a worldview carved in stone. Time to the Aztecs wasn't linear, it was cyclical. Worlds had risen and fallen before. And this one was just another chapter. This belief shaped everything, their rituals, their decisions, their understanding of existence itself. To them, life and death weren't opposites, they were partners. This is where history gets uncomfortable. Because yes, human sacrifice did exist, but not in the way it's often exaggerated. To the Aztecs, these acts were not driven by cruelty, but by necessity. They believed the universe required balance, and that human offerings helped sustain the cosmic order, feeding the sun, ensuring its rise each day. Disturbing? Yes, but also deeply philosophical. It reflects a worldview where humans are not above nature, but part of it, responsible for maintaining its balance. A concept that, strangely enough, feels very modern. And then there's language, a quiet legacy, one that you may be using without even knowing it. The Aztecs spoke Nahuatl, a language rich in imagery and metaphor. Words weren't just labels, they painted pictures. And today echoes of Nahuatl exist all around you. Chocolate, tomato, avocado. These words, common every day, trace back to Aztec roots. Think about that. Every time you eat, speak, or cook, you're interacting with fragments of their world. Their influence didn't vanish. It blended, adapted, survived in food. That legacy might be the most delicious of all. Before global trade connected continents, the Aztecs had already cultivated some of the world's most important crops. Cacao, used to make chocolate, was so valuable it functioned as currency. Corn, maize, was central to their diet and identity, considered a gift from the gods. Tomatoes, chilies, beans, staples that now define entire cuisines. Without the Aztecs and other Mesoamerican civilizations, global food culture would look completely different. No chocolate bars, no pasta sauces as we know them, no guacamole. Their agricultural knowledge didn't just feed their empire, it fed the future. But perhaps the most overlooked part of Aztec civilization is their philosophy. They ask questions that still challenge us today. What does it mean to live a good life? Is happiness something we chase or something we balance? What is our role in the universe? Aztec thinkers believed life was inherently unstable, slippery, unpredictable. Instead of chasing constant happiness, they focused on living a rooted life. A life grounded in truth, discipline, and connection, not perfection. Balance. They emphasized education, moral development, and self-control. Children were taught not just skills, but responsibility to their community, to nature, and to themselves. This wasn't a chaotic society. It was structured, intentional, deep. And yet, despite all of this, much of their story was nearly erased. In the early 16th century, everything changed. Foreign ships appeared on the horizon. Men arrived with weapons, diseases, and intentions that would reshape history forever. The fall of the Aztec Empire is often told as a simple conquest, but the reality was far more complex, involving alliances, internal tensions, and forces beyond anyone's control. What followed was not just the destruction of a city, it was the rewriting of a narrative. Temples were torn down, records were burned, voices were silenced, and in their place, a simplified image remained. The bloodthirsty Aztecs, a label that ignores everything else. But history has a way of resurfacing. Piece by piece, scholars, archaeologists, and storytellers have begun to reconstruct what was lost. And what they're finding is far more impressive than the myth. The Aztecs were not just warriors. They were innovators, philosophers, engineers, artists, a civilization that understood balance in ways we're only beginning to rediscover. And maybe that's the most shocking part of all. Not what they did, but how much of them still exists in your food, your language, your ideas, even in the way we're starting to rethink our relationship with nature. So the next time you hear the word Aztec, don't just picture sacrifice. Picture a city on water, floating gardens feeding thousands, a people who looked at the stars and saw cycles, not chaos. Because what they left behind wasn't just history, it was a blueprint. What if I told you the fall of the Aztecs wasn't just a conquest, it was a chain reaction, a collision of worlds, of misunderstandings, of ambition, and something far more fragile, belief. Because empires don't just collapse overnight, they crack first. It begins in the year 1519. On the eastern horizon of Mesoamerica, something appears, something no one in the Aztec world has ever seen before. Floating mountains, that's what they looked like. Massive ships, cutting through the waters, carrying men with pale skin, strange armor, and weapons that thundered like the sky itself. At the center of it all was a man named Hernán Cortés. But this isn't a story about a powerful invader easily defeating a helpless empire. That version too simple, too clean. The truth is far more complicated. When word reached Tenochtitlan, the Emperor Moctezuma II didn't react with immediate war. He hesitated, and that hesitation would change everything. You have to understand the world through Aztec eyes. This was a civilization deeply connected to prophecy, cycles, and cosmic balance. Their understanding of time wasn't just historical, it was spiritual. And according to some interpretations, there were whispers, ancient expectations, that beings would one day arrive from the east. So when news came of strangers, dressed in shimmering metal, riding animals that looked like deer but moved like the wind, it didn't just feel like an invasion. It felt like something else, something foretold. Moctezuma sent gifts, gold precious objects, symbols of power, but instead of discouraging the strangers, it did the opposite. It confirmed something in Cortés's mind. There was wealth here. And where there is wealth, there is conquest.